This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Okay. I'll do an intro. So we're just going to go right into, and it's Dr. Samantha Harte.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so fancy. You don't have to call me that the whole time, but
I'll call you Samantha once in a while.
Yeah.
But officially, as we start here, it's Dr. Samantha Harte. And I love starting off with this question. Reading about you, I know 16 years sobriety is the number I see, but what is your sobriety date?
February 28th, 2009.
Nice.
Which, by the way, is completely made up. I was a person who, when I came in, was not at all ready to be there. And I was still smoking weed early in the month of February in 2009 in the meetings. And everyone just kept saying, no mind-altering substances from the neck up. And eventually I turned to a friend who became my sponsor and I said, does that also mean weed? And he was like, yes, babe. How about this? How about we just pick an arbitrary date at the end of February and we'll call that day one.
So here we are. So here we are, 16 years later. So you grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah, sure did.
What was life like for you as a youth? I know, just reading a little bit, mom had some mental health stuff. What was the household like?
The household was very chaotic, very unstable. And I was the youngest, but I was the peacekeeper. So my parents were really unhappily married. And by the time I remember a lot, my father was summoned to the basement. And so upstairs, it was my mother, my big sister, and I. And my mother would just tell us tales of all the times he wronged her and all the ways in which she retaliated and continued to retaliate. And we would watch her pop prescription pills like they were candy. We would watch her have a really strange relationship with food and body image. She would tell us about her extramarital affairs that she was actively having. And my sister was also very awkwardly going through puberty, and she was angry and acting out sexually and sneaking out to the New York City clubs and trying drugs. And so for me, it was like, this is all normal, I guess, until I went away to college and realized, what the fuck just happened in that house? What the hell? So I really just thought whatever my mother says is the absolute truth. And she said things like, there is no such thing as God. Men are assholes. Get your degree because nobody can take it from you. And the only person you can count on is yourself. And if you couple that with, I was so good at doing things. I was so good at performing, at getting the A, at getting the good body. I mean, my outsides looked so pristine, and I really doubled down on those because I could control those and I couldn't control the chaos in my house. And boy, did I chase the illusion of control and that external validation well into sobriety until it almost killed me.
Well, and I love your story because it talks about that perfection actually being a problem, right? And I see when I say that, you just you're nodding your head, and it's like, it still takes a little bit out of you because that pursuit of perfection can be so painful. When did alcohol and drugs start to show up to sort of, provide some kind of antidote to a lot of the pressure you were feeling?
Well, I want to say one thing about the thing you just said, and then I'll get into sort of when my using went from a thing that I could take or leave to a thing that I always did. And I feel like there's a real jumping off point when it escalated. But, in my current approach to the steps, when we talk about 6 and 7 character defects, which I don't like to call them that. I think we all have character traits, and they can either be an asset or a liability at any time of the day, forever and ever, whether you're an addict or not. So perfectionism was an extremely valuable tool that for a very long time was an asset to me. And then it crossed an invisible line and became a massive liability. And even to this day, that part of me can achieve amazing things. That part of me is so multitask oriented, highly organized, extremely ambitious. And that's beautiful. But when it is a shield for vulnerability, when it is a mechanism for controlling, when what I actually need to do is grieve, it becomes a dangerous liability. And then to the second thing you asked me, when I went away to college, my perfectionism was dialed all the way up. And so everybody who said, you're going to come back and gain weight, you're going to flunk out your first semester, I was like, have you met me yet? That's not going to be my story. And so what did I do? I came back thinner and fitter. I came back with straight A's at Boston University, which was very hard to do. And I'm rolling into my sophomore year, and I get this one teacher who won't give me anything other than a C, which was the first time in my life that's ever happened. And I had no ability to tolerate uncertainty, let alone failure. And a C was failure in my mind. And so rather than be okay with maybe getting a B- at best, rather than asking for help, rather these basic skills that I never learned, I cheated. And I've never done that before or since, and I got caught. I ended up getting an 18-month suspension from the university. And the level of shame that I felt is something I didn't put together, to be honest, until the recent years of my life, when I look at the timeline of my addiction, because I too snuck out of the house with a fake ID to Sound Factory, which if you're listening from the East Coast, you know what that place was.
Yes.
It was an unbelievable drug dungeon when ecstasy was all the rage.
And it would be open till like 8, 9 in the morning, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that stuff was so fun at the time, and I could go for weeks and weeks and weeks. I wouldn't even think about drinking and music. After the suspension, I moved home with my mother, who was now separately living in Long Island. My parents stayed legally married until the day my father died, but they were totally enmeshed emotionally and financially. So I'm with her, and I'm also really angry at her because I had gotten away to college and thought, why did she tell me all of these things? Like, it felt like she poisoned my mind, and all I had done was hold her up on this pedestal. So all of that was collapsing, and now she's mortified that her brilliant daughter got suspended, and I'm mortified that I got suspended, and we're living together. And I was like, I am moving to New York City. And guess what, Mom? That thing that you didn't support, my dreams of singing and dancing, that's what I'm going to go do. Sorry to collapse all your hopes and dreams. And I moved to New York City. And what does a budding young star do to survive in New York City? They become a bartender, obviously. So you combine this super traumatic event with my hardwiring for I can control the world around me, followed by the environmental circumstances that were super unstable, where I was going to then double down on the people, places, things, and situations that I could control. And I was off to the races because I never thought this would be an issue for me, ever, ever, ever. And as soon as alcohol was coupled with cocaine behind the bar, it was just like a love affair.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't that many years before, there was a real windy road with entertainment. And I eventually finished my undergrad degree in New York City and decided to play it really, really safe and try to get into grad school to be a physical therapist and get a doctorate and have that doctor in front of my name, like my mom always wanted. And on the evening of my acceptance into my doctoral program, I overdosed on cocaine.
Whoa.
Which was not rock bottom, by the way. Very, very important to say that.
Where did you bartend in New York?
Oh, where didn't I bartend? If there's a bar on the East Side between the 20s and the 80s, I bartended.
Really?
I would say my longest stint was at Turtle Bay, which was like someplace in the 30s, like a real down to earth kind of place where you could.
I was the worst bartender in the history of New York City. I bartended at this place called Local for a while. And it was right up, it was like in the 50s on the East Side, like 50 and 3rd or something. I was terrible. Same as you, like I lived in New York, drank, and discovered cocaine. And it was just like, it was like you described it very well for me. It was a love affair. I mean, there's no question about it. My first spiritual experience was drinking, and then the cocaine got added in it. And it truly does, for me, allow myself to see like when I was just so taken by this, you know, and other people liked it, sure, but they weren't fueled by it, you know, like I was. And New York City was a wonderful place for that budding love affair, you know, it truly was.
So yes, and they're everywhere you look. Somebody's co-signing you're using, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not doing as much as they are, so I'm fine.
But Samantha, you managed to stay. I mean, it sounds like there are some guardrails for you. I mean, you're well until that overdose, but you're about to go, you know, for a graduate degree. Like, what precipitates that overdose? What happens that we end up in that spot? And anything like, just if you want to go backwards or whatever, like you put in whatever you want.
Well, you know, the motto by which I lived was work hard, play hard. And what that meant was grind until you drop, study until you drop, exercise until you drop, do everything at level 10 out of 10, not because it brings you joy, but because it's going to get you that thing over there that everyone said you should get that's going to make you happy. And because it's so unrelenting, that pursuit, and unforgiving, you're going to go party like a fucking rock star when you're done. And what did that mean? Drink, smoke, do cocaine into oblivion, but with no sense that I was ever going to be in real danger. Because it was such a great formula until it wasn't, right? So for me, the pursuit of, I think I want to be a star, but I'm going to go to Boston University and play it safe. Then I get kicked out. Then I try to be a star and I realize how fucking scary and hard the world of entertainment is. And so I go back to school, finish my degree and go, oh, but I don't want a degree in communications. And I don't just want to be like a dance teacher forever. So what else is there? Oh, someone was getting their doctorate in physical therapy. That sounds really prestigious. And that sounds like something I could really like. What does that look like? Wait, I need all the pre-med courses and I don't have any of them? Fuck. So let me take one science class and just see how I do, which led to 2 and then 3. And before you know it, 2 years of studying for just pre-med courses that I was not naturally inclined to do well in. I had to work really, really hard to get that side of the brain turned on because I was very creative. And finally, I get accepted after, just blood, sweat, and tears with what I went through from the moment I went away to college in BU to that acceptance letter. And I was like, I know exactly how I'm going to take the edge off. And I called the one girl in my life who partied harder than I did. And I was like, let's fucking celebrate. Because I knew it wouldn't matter how much cocaine I wanted to do. She would want to do more. And so there was nothing to be worried about.
Yeah.
And we called the dealer, you know, I don't know, at 2 p.m. on a Saturday when it was Christmas time in New York City. We did cocaine all day long. We walked all over the city, stopped in the bars, had a Corona, did more cocaine off the bathroom stalls, bought a bunch of gifts because the next day I was supposed to be going into Staten Island, which I did, to see my sister's husband and her in-laws. And, I start to feel off. And then I wake up on the floor with this girl that I literally don't know, who's super coked out and terrified about whatever she just saw, trying to call the ambulance and get them to come to my place. And I was like, get off the phone, because I immediately knew something horrible happened.
Yeah.
And, that was not at all, as I mentioned, that was a physical bottom. That was a moment where I went, oh my God, I'm losing control over cocaine.
Yeah.
That's it. Like nothing else, not the way I'm living, not my coping mechanisms of perfectionism, really not anything at all. Not alcohol either, by the way, just cocaine. And I'll never forget the next day, I had a big cut across my chin because what she told me was I was seizuring, and she was trying to roll me on my side and pull my tongue out of the back of my throat so I wouldn't choke on it. And I was swatting at her. And so I cut myself. I had a cut. And the next day I woke up and I had leftover cocaine, and I wasn't going to throw it out, obviously, because I wasn't done. And I brought it with me. Now, note for the listener, okay? I went on the Staten Island ferry, you guys. I think that's the only time in my life I went on the Staten Island ferry. My whole life story would be different if something had happened in this moment, but it didn't for whatever reason. They have drug sniffing dogs, okay, before you get on the ferry. So here I am coming up the escalator. I've got the little bag of cocaine somewhere, stuffed somewhere in my suitcase. And I'm like, this is it. This is it. Like, this is the moment. It all comes crashing down. And then I just walked past them. And I went on the ferry and I saw my sister, who drank and used like I did. And I gave her a look and I said, I got to tell you something. We got to go upstairs. And I confessed to her because I knew I could tell her. And she said, Sam, it just sounds like you did too much. Here, give me what you have. You just need to be more careful. And she put some on her fingernail. And I sniffed it. And her and I finished the cocaine on Christmas Eve. And the only bright spot in that whole situation was that I called the one person I knew who had been a personal training client of mine a few years earlier, because on my journey to physical therapy, I was trying on jobs. And so while bartending, I was like, maybe training. I like the body. I don't know. And I met this guy named Bobby Spillane. And I remember him telling me about his sobriety, and I'd never met anybody who was sober. So he came to mind, and I called and confessed to him. And he was like, let me take you to a meeting. So when I got back from that Staten Island trip, I went to a meeting with him and I sat in the back and I was like, no way. No way. I don't feel like you guys. I didn't feel like I needed drugs and alcohol to light up, to feel a part of. I was very social. I was super sick. I othered myself to death.
Yep.
I wasn't done.
Yeah.
And it would be another year and a half before I found my way back.
And so you compare yourself out right away, which is what I certainly did.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up going, back about your business as usual, right? You're back out there. What happens in that year and a half?
What I realize now about AA and the way I responded to it is that, and I don't know if what I'm about to say would have changed anything, but I think it would have. And this is what I ended up writing a book about. And this is literally what all of my work in the world is today, which is that at the time, I compared, I othered, I did all that stuff, right? But what was actually happening when I read the steps was that I did not feel safe. The idea of working them and believing the things they were saying I should believe did not make me feel safe. Why? because they came up against every childhood belief that kept me safe, many of which that were still working for me. So for me to buy into those steps, I would have to feel so unsafe with the way I was living and the tools I had, that those steps felt like a safe container, but they didn't.
So did you get that gift of desperation? Because that's what happened to me, right? I was in and out, in and out. It took me a decade to get a year, right? Like, because I just hadn't hit that point where I was willing to go to any lengths. And I love how you reimagine the steps to sort of, so they worked for you, and now they work for all these other people that you work with, right? In so many different ways. But like, did you end up finding safety in those when you hit a bottom, or was it that you sort of retooled them and that's what worked?
It was, I had to hit spiritual rock bottom first to then be in a place where I didn't want to die, but I could no longer go on living the way I was living. The way I was living was death gripping the world around me. So I went back in a year and a half later because the guy I was dating found a prescription pill bottle that I was hiding from him and abusing, and looked at me with total shame and disgust. And I was so scared he was going to leave me that I went back to the meetings. So again, I this was not the gift of desperation. In fact, it would not be until 5 years sober, that guy that I had dated in my active addiction, who I cheated on a gazillion times, who stayed with me when he shouldn't have, who found the pill bottle, he went on to propose to me. We went on to get married, and all the wreckage showed up on the front end of our marriage. So now I have a couple years sober. I'm thinking, we fucking made it. We survived. This guy stayed with me. I can't believe it.
What a love story.
And he starts pulling away. In every way, a person who you love and whose love you dangerously depend on can pull away. We did not share finances. He did not look me in the eye half the time. He went on trips and left his ring at home. He rejected me sexually, and I went insane in recovery. So I had done the steps a few times up until this marital crisis, but never with a power that wasn't external to me. I didn't really understand that his love for me was my higher power until he pulled it away from me. So the God thing was a thing that I still felt very threatened by based on the way I was raised and what my mother told me. And I screamed and begged and pleaded for this man to love me and forgive me, because then I would be okay. And he didn't, and he wouldn't. And I ended up having enough recovery to sleep on a friend's couch for a weekend, which turned into moving in with a sponsor who was very God heavy. That was not a good idea for me. That lasted about a month. Then I slept on a friend's air mattress for 3 months. And then a friend said, you can't live like this. You have to get a place that's your own, where you can heal.
But when you say, real quick, when you say, I just want to dig on something, when you say you had enough recovery, like enough self-esteem where you were like, this isn't right for me. I don't feel right about how I'm being treated, because there's a split happening here. And I'm not going to subject myself to just staying around.
No, I had very little self-esteem at that point.
Okay.
Intuition was trying to talk to me and say, I think he's cheating on you, but it was overridden by the voice that was running my life, which was, this is what you fucking get for what you did. So the part of me that knew I had to move out, was the part that was flying into fits of rage in sobriety because of the fighting between my husband and I became so frequent, and it was totally unmanageable. And I knew that if this kept up, I might relapse. And if I relapse, Because what I didn't tell you is that man who saved my life, who sponsored me in that first year, who had 22 years sober from heroin addiction, he relapsed at the end of my first year and he killed himself.
Wow.
I had enough sobriety to be afraid of my rage and afraid of a relapse, because that meant I was going to die. And I didn't want to die. But I literally did not know how to live without this man's love for me. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Now, when I signed the lease for my own apartment, to me, that was utter failure. That was literal proof that everything I was trying to do to make this man forgive me stopped working. And that was spiritual rock bottom. And so for me, the safety of the steps entered after. So it was a great flash of darkness, right? And I'm in this apartment. I have a mattress on the floor. It's totally unfurnished. And I'm just sobbing, thinking, what the fuck am I going to do now? And a little voice showed up and said, you're going to have to put your arms around yourself. I was a little startled by the sound of the voice. And so that first night, I rolled over onto my side and I hugged myself very awkwardly and cried until I fell asleep. And I kept going to meetings and I heard this woman share, and she had a wild story. She had killed somebody in a car wreck in her using, and she seemed so happy in her sobriety and was in multiple 12-step programs. So she had a wider lens through which she worked the steps. And I just rushed over to her and said, will you sponsor me? And when we started working together and she saw my history of the steps and where I was at and my relationship with this idea of God, she said, what if we do the steps on your marriage? I'm like, what do you mean? See, this is the thing about pain, and pain being a circuit breaker, because I was in feedback loops of these behaviors of I'm going to control everything around me and everything's going to be fine when I do. And all of a sudden it collapsed. So the circuit fried out. The pattern literally stopped working. And now I'm suffering. And this woman comes in this beautiful window of opportunity and says, I have an idea. And so I latched on. I said, tell me more. Well, you know you're powerless over drugs and alcohol. You got that. You're clear. What if we talk about your powerlessness in your marriage? You're powerless over that you cheated on him in the beginning and he stayed and you guys didn't have counseling. You're powerless over whether he's cheating on you now. You're powerless over when and if he'll ever forgive you. You're powerless over the future of the relationship. And when you try to exert power over any of this, your life becomes unmanageable. Well, that was really easy to see. And then what do I have power over if all of that is true? Where can I redirect my attention to what I can change? And so suddenly we're going through the steps in this way. And by the way, I've since repurposed the language much more in the last 11 years of my recovery. And I'll explain what I mean in a little bit if we can talk about step 2 at some point, because I love that step. It's a really great.
I'm loving this. Yeah.
So we get to the 9th step, right? Which is making an amends. And I'm 5 years sober. I've made so many amends, especially to my husband. And I'm thinking to myself, God damn it, man. How many fucking times do I have to be sorry for this? Like, how long do I have to suffer for what I did? And she said, have you ever made an amends to yourself?
Yeah.
And I hadn't.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I could. I needed someone to give me permission. I was a professional self-lacerator. I do not know an addict who is not suffering from the weight of some level of guilt regret, and the most dangerous of all, shame.
Yep.
And in my opinion, if we do not heal the shame and give it a place to go and shine the light on it, we are always in trouble of a behavioral relapse and then an actual physical one. This woman giving me permission to forgive myself meant that in the days and weeks to follow, I had to elevate my consciousness around the way I was speaking to myself. So and it was relentless. Every single time that voice in my head said, this is what you fucking get for what you do. I had to wait a second. Hey girl. Hey, I just want to speak to you for a moment, because that's something someone would say who doesn't love and forgive themselves. And I'm trying to cast a vote for a person who does love and forgive themselves. And so if that's true, and that can be true over there, what might I say to myself instead? And then I had to dream it up. And I had to practice. I mean, talk about building new feedback loops.
Yes, the practice of it.
One thing to break a circuit. It's one thing to become conscious that these unconscious patterns are no longer working for us. I know why you're here, but you're killing me. Now what? So this woman's giving me ideas, but it is my job to double down on practicing them so that I have a way to reroute the way I've been thinking, behaving, acting. So in the process of this rigorous practice of compassionate self-talk, the miracle happens, which is that little voice that said, you should put your arms around yourself, she kept showing up. But she showed up louder and more frequently, but her voice was always the same. It was calm, clear, curious, and compassionate, which sounded nothing like my critical voice.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, she always rose from the belly up. I can't explain that. I'm not sure what that means. We're learning a lot about the gut and the gut microbiome and it being considered like a second brain to the body. And so I'm very curious, as more research is done, what's going to be revealed. But in my actual body, when I am in my trauma, my wounding, my old behaviors, we can call it alcoholism. I think it's a little deeper than that. It's always top down. It's always cerebral. It's always obsessive and afraid and constrictive and anxiety producing. And when I'm in my higher self, my intuitive self, it is expansive and open and it just floats up. The next right idea, the next right action, the next right thought. I would not have been able to hear the sound of her voice with the rigor that I started to hear it if I had not been given permission to forgive myself.
And to clear the deck of all the shame.
Exactly.
Because that's, and what I've learned, like, and my sponsor told me this not too long, 5 years ago, I was in a relationship and I was like getting like all kinds of out of sorts about it. And, he was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like self-pity is selfish. And I was like, wow, that's something that simple. And then I started to notice this, and at that time I'm like 8 years sober, but I'm like, so the more time I spend pitying myself, that's blocking me off from what I'll call like the sunlight of the spirit and the ability to actually shine any light that comes through me, sobriety wise or God wise, onto someone else. Right. And that was a switch for me to flip that led to so much more, like to what you're saying, so much more growth. So practicing that, right, and understanding that. And I'm going to steal that. I know you will let me, but I love that voice. I love that curious voice, compassionate and understanding. That is a voice that I've done better at allowing something similar like that between my ears. But a lot of times it's the thing that we hear, right? If I had a friend that talked to me the way I talk to myself a lot of times, there was no way would they be my friend, And so that's what you're telling us, or what you're sharing here is impactful.
What's so fascinating to me is that, my degree is in the body, right? And now that I have this book out and I coach people, not just on their bodies, but on their spirits, there's been this feeling of, imposter syndrome. Who am I? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not I didn't go to, all the degree. Like, I don't have a degree in this stuff, but I know what I know, and I can certainly share my experience and use a framework with other people that has saved my own life. And I say all that because I don't know if you know about the therapeutic modality IFS, which
No.
stands for Internal Family Systems. And it's getting a lot of traction right now as a really sort of cutting edge therapeutic modality in the world of psychology. And the only reason I know about it is because I read books all the time. And Gabrielle Bernstein, who was a spiritual mentor before she knew she was a mentor in my marital crisis, I started reading her books, and her latest book is called Self-Help. And I remember seeing that was the title, and I just rolled my eyes, judging her, like, oh, come on, Gabby, like, all your work is self-help. Could you come up with a better title? But what I realized is that she has had experience with IFS therapy, which I'm going to get into, and it changed her life. And she ended up wanting to write a book about it with the blessing of the man who invented it. And the self in self-help that she's talking about is our highest self. So IFS is all about this idea that you have a family of parts inside of you. And the goal is to understand why they're there: the controller, the procrastinator, the cocaine part, the overachiever, all the parts of you are there, and they're there for a reason. And when they start doubling down on behaviors that used to help you and are now hurting you in your adult life, it's all about getting compassionate and curious about why they're showing up, what they have to say, and then lovingly redirecting your highest self into the seat of CEO at the boardroom table with all your parts, instead of the alcoholic part or the controlling part trying to go, no, this is what we got to do today. To survive, baby. Like, all got, it's like, no.
Yeah.
Now when I look back at this process with this woman and this journey through the steps, I'm thinking it was accidentally IFS. Like, thinking about that, where my breakthrough came from was when I identified the critical part of myself as a part that has been trying for decades to protect me. When she heard the steps on the wall, she was like, no, you will have to give me up. And I'm the one making everything okay for you. You can't do those steps, Samantha. Don't you see how I've kept you safe in your house? I've made everything okay for you. No. Right. And so I was like, she's right. Like, she's been right. She's right until the marital crisis, when she finally wasn't right. And I could look at her and talk to her and say, I know why you're here. Thank you for your service. I love you, but you can stand down now.
Yes. I totally, like, an understanding as to why that's there.
I think that's what I mean by trauma informed, right? Like, and now more than ever, like, I'm like, holy shit, this version of the steps is more trauma informed. And why shouldn't it be? We are in 2025. The program began in 1935. We're talking about almost 100 years later. They are beautiful in their universal messages. They are ancient spiritual nuggets of wisdom, but they are wrapped in things that are not trauma informed. And most addicts are coming into the rooms with little t and big T trauma of experiences and instances where they were not seen or loved when they needed to be. And alcohol and drugs were a solution to that problem. So can we try to meet them there? And when I when I reduce down all the 12 steps, let's just take them all away to like the listener who's like, oh, 12, like much. And what if I didn't have a lot of trauma and whatever it is, whatever the kicking and screaming is,
Whatever the kicking and screaming is, I love it.
Well, because like, listen, sometimes when I talk about this stuff, I'm talking to a group of entrepreneurs or a corporate audience who isn't necessarily a group of addicts. So then what would I say to them? And here's what it comes down to. I love this image. It's just been coming to me lately, right? So if we can, a pyramid, imagine a pyramid. And whoever you are, listener, you're sitting at the top of the pyramid like a kid in a playground, and your legs are straddled across the sides, both sides. On the left side is compassionate curiosity. And on the right side is radical responsibility. If those were the two metrics by which we lived our lives, particularly with matters of the heart, fear, resentment, betrayal, uncertainty, loss, this world would be in such better shape. So when people ask me now, okay, well, what's the thing you would tell the listener? What's the one piece of advice? Right? You get a lot. What's the one piece of advice? Well, since this amends process turned on its head toward me was the thing. Here's the most practical application. Okay. Now let's take a mother. I'm a mother. I have 2 kids, right? At any given moment in my day as a mother, mindful as I'm trying to be, I could be short-tempered. I could snap or get irritated and just say whatever I'm going to say to the kid, right? And then I'm like, oh, shit, And what comes up? Why the fuck did I just say that? Why did I just do that? Like guilt, shame, regret, and that voice. Why? Okay. Compassionate curiosity. Instead of, why the fuck? We're going to shift to, why did I just say that?
Yeah.
Well, what just happened? Oh, I haven't been to a meeting in 5 days. I didn't sleep well last night. Quick inventory. Oh, I'm really hungry. Oh, I'm actually still angry at my husband for this thing, and I haven't cleared that out. And now I just took out my irritability on my child. Whatever it is, I'm going to get curious about it. Because if I don't, and I'm judging myself, I'm just pigeonholed and I'm stuck because now I'm a shitty mother and now I have guilt and shame about that. And I'm going to do something to not feel it.
And now you have the radical responsibility, right?
Right. So now that I've opened up to curiosity, I have a whole laundry list of what probably happened. What am I going to do about it? Radical responsibility. Well, I can absolutely say I'm sorry to my child, and not just say I'm sorry. I can actually think through now all the things that led up to that moment and what I'm going to do differently so that it hopefully doesn't happen again. And then I'll communicate that to my child. Jack, I'm so sorry. I just got angry with you and I was short-tempered, and I think it's because I'm hungry and I'm a little sad about something going on, and you didn't deserve that. And next time I'm going to try and take a deep breath, and I'm going to try and eat first, and I'm just going to do better next time, and I'm working on it. And that's it. Now it's onward with my day. Now I don't have guilt, regret, and shame. Now I built up self-esteem because I did an esteemable act. I've excavated and I shined a light on what needs more work or healing inside of me. And I can go out and do it.
And here's another thing too, and I know you know this, but this is what I picked up. Somebody who you are the most important thing in their life has seen you be vulnerable and responsible. And that's the exact opposite of the shit you picked up from your mom, right? No, really. So that, and so what you're doing is you're breaking the cycle and you're snapping off the branch of the family tree, and another one that's wildly strong and healthy breaks off or grows, and then they can affect society in a positive way. It's amazing, how what you're talking about, right? What you've discovered and what you're sharing with people. And we'll talk about your book, and I want to talk about your podcast too. But all of this stuff you're putting out there, and I love how it starts at home, because that's the most that's the real deal. I can be awesome to the person that I bump into at the Wawa here, seeing my mom in Philly, but like, how am I going to be with my fiance? How am I going to be towards my mom when she's asking me to do stuff I don't want to do?
Mhm. Yeah. And, I love that you said that, because when people ask me now, what am I working on? What are the dreams? What are the aspirations? And they're big. I mean, my career aspirations at this point are enormous. And all of that is amazing. And again, that's the sort of perfectionism as an asset moment. I think it's wonderful. And at the same time, here's a prayer I've been saying so much lately, and I find it so, so, so powerful. Help me want everything and need nothing. I want everything. I want the greatest impact, but I don't need it to be okay. In fact, if I died today, which I hope I don't, I've already done the best and the hardest thing, which is not just getting and staying sober, but as you said, breaking the cycle of dysfunction. My children will know a sober mother. They will read my book and know how their mother got through her hardest things. They will hear my intellect on a podcast and the way I cut through the noise with my guests to speak straight to their heart. There is nothing better than that. There is nothing more magnificent that I will ever, ever accomplish in my life than that.
And as somebody else who feels like you're speaking to me, like right to the core, because it's somebody else I was going to ask you, and you just told me, how do you navigate that ambition, right? Mm-hmm. And not have it become this, I'm selfed up 24/7 trying to figure out how I can accomplish what I'm looking to get accomplished, right? Mm-hmm. But the needing nothing, right? That is, and honestly, that's when I'm most effective, is when I'm loose. When I'm going for it, but I'm loose and I'm rooted in all the stuff that I've been able to learn about myself and discover through conversations with people like you.
Mm-hmm. It's wild, because when I was trying to get a record deal in New York at 1920, everything I wanted with a microphone and the stage and the lights was because I was not okay on the inside. I loved it. There was that part, like I still do. I love the arts. But I was only going to be okay if they noticed me, or they picked me, or they signed me. And now I want to sell out stadiums so I can reach thousands of people. I want to roll around in financial abundance because it means I've reached millions of lives. But I don't need any of that to be okay inside. I already am. That is the most powerful place that a person can be.
How do you get there? Because it's one thing to say it out loud, right? But that there's a development, a muscle memory that has to be built. How do you get there?
Clearing out shame so we can hear the whisper of our intuition, to me, is fundamental when I coach people. If they're carrying any guilt, regret, or shame around, fundamental. And then our responsibility is to honor the call of our intuition again and again and again. What do I mean? How has this given me the sturdiness that I'm describing, that you're asking me about? Well, in my marital crisis, when my lease was up and I was going to move back in with my husband because things seemed to be getting better, though it would be a long time before they were. Yeah. She said, maybe you should keep this place. maybe you should ask the landlord if you could turn it into a fitness studio. I was like, okay. So I did. I asked, and I was in a mixed use building, residential and commercial. So sure enough, I was allowed. And that was the beginning of Strong Heart Fitness. That was my first location. It was from the apartment I was living in my marital crisis. Okay. Strong Heart Fitness has been in business since 2013, by the way. And there's so much to say just about that. But let's just hold on to that nugget, which is a big one, right? Fast forward to, I find out my husband's having an extramarital affair. Okay. And it was a long one. And the betrayal was thick and deep, and it gutted me. And I was like, fuck you, I'm out. Now I have my business. I get a new apartment. I'm getting the divorce papers ready, and I'm having all the sex and all the land. And I'm like, yes, like, bring it on, God. I don't care. Like, it doesn't look like how I thought, but I'm okay now. And that's okay. Right. So 8 months in to this self-liberating journey, my intuition shows up and she says, are you sure you're done? In that calm, compassionate voice. And I'm kicking and screaming, all the parts of me kicking and screaming. Are you fucking kidding me? How dare you ask me to like, I've just been through hell. Tantruming, right? And she's like, if you're done, be done. I love you. You fought the good fight. And I support whatever decision you make. But if you're not done, and if there is a part of you that can see a happy life with this man on the other side of this mess, you might need to stay. Just a loving suggestion, right? And I was like, oh my God. Like, but I refused to turn my back on her ever again. So I had to take what she said into consideration. And then I waited and I meditated and I sat on it for weeks. And it was just the visual of in my meditation was looking, in the New York City subway system. So you're looking for the train to come and it's not coming. It's just pitch black. And then you just see the light on the front of the train. Finally, right? That was the image every time. And I was like, God, that has to mean that there's a flicker of hope. I can't fucking believe this. I can't fucking believe this. And I want to tell everybody that I'm 11 years on the other side of that with the same man. We have 2 children. We are happily married with a thriving sex life. We're super financially successful and stable. Okay. I got through a really hard thing by honoring the call of my intuition. The same thing happened when my father passed away and I tried to run from my grief. And finally it caught up to me and my intuition said, why are you punishing me? Because I was so sure that I was a piece of shit daughter for always being so angry at him up until the day he died, because he was enabling my mom and sister. And I couldn't quite get over that. Even though I had worked the steps and I had done all the things to see him as a sick man, I had a chip on my shoulder. And when he died, I was running from my regret until my intuition stopped me and said, why are you punishing me? And then I realized I needed to do some deep healing work. And so I did. And then I had that experience behind me that I got through. And then I lost my sister 3 years ago.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And it's fun. And I lost my brother 2 years ago.
Wow.
And so that really hit me. And what you just said about your father really struck a chord, because I have some work to do with the grief. I running from it. In my mind, that term is a little heavy, but or that verb is a lot, but it's true. I mean, that's in my own way. I think that's what I've been doing, and I'm working on kind of digging into that a little, because it's really heavy. But also, to what you said, it's because we talked about esteem, right? You said I had very little self-esteem, right? When you said you had just enough recovery in you to get your own place. Like I have, because of situations like we are hit with in sobriety, I've built self-esteem because I've done the right thing talking to that voice, right? And going through hard stuff, you do have confidence. It builds, it gives you that, oh, all right, like, now I can make tough decisions. I feel good about myself. I've done esteemable things. And I love how you said I got through that, and then it enables me to handle other things with confidence and understanding.
Yes. And, this process of recovery is very complex and it's messy. And, when it came to my father, I just went straight back in to an old behavior. I controlled food and body like a magician. And I was 3 months postpartum, so I had a lot to prove. And it was so easy to believe that what I was doing was just bouncing back and showing the world how fit I could be after baby number 2. But then I got to the pre-pregnancy weight and a voice inside my head said, I wonder how skinny we can get now. And I knew that wasn't my intuition. And I thought, me too, knowing full well I was not okay in that moment. And I got really thin. And the whole world told me how amazing I looked. And then I was trapped in a flotation tank on a date with my husband. And I was dreading it because now I was stuck with myself. And I had been running from myself, from my pain. And at 45 minutes, the chitter chatter finally went quiet. And then my intuition said, why are you punishing me? And I knew she meant, why are you trying to make yourself disappear? And I immediately went into a meditation for the last 15 minutes in the tank, where every time I took a breath in, I said, I love you, Sam. Every time I took a breath out, I said, I forgive you, Dad. Until I felt the need to switch. And I took a breath in and said, I love you, Dad. And I took a breath out and said, I forgive you, Sam. And that was the beginning of trying to heal from this extremely complicated relationship where I had every right to be angry.
Yeah.
But that I really needed to heal from.
Yeah, that justifiable anger is no good for us. It's no good for me. It does not ever work out or come out the right way. All right, let's talk a little bit about your book because I want to get in.
Yes.
Why did you write the book?
I don't remember this moment. When my sister died, I was in the Austin airport with my husband. And I just remember dropping to the floor and wailing. And we had to get on a plane to go to LA. After which I had to turn around and come back to New Jersey, right? And on the plane ride, he has told me that I turned to him and said, I'm writing a fucking book. So apparently on that day, my intuition was like, no more. You are not recovering in silence anymore. You are not only treating the body. This whole soul sickness presentation you've been noticing in your clinic, which by the way, Strong Heart Fitness expanded. And I had a private practice for 10 years in Santa Monica. And I kept noticing normal folks with spiritual maladies.
That's it.
That all those things were getting in the way of their physical body pain being cured. And I couldn't do anything about it because that's not why they hired me, but it bothered me. And then she died. And my intuition was like, you will never separate the body and the spirit ever again. And this book is going to tackle the spiritual side of wellness. And it's going to draw parallels between what you saw in your clinic and what you see in the rooms. And it's going to talk about the nervous system. And it's going to give people a blueprint for how to heal, whether they are an addict or not, whether their addiction is people pleasing, perfectionism, the body image, and the beauty standard, or drugs and alcohol. You're going to be the girl who 12-stepped the world.
I love that.
That's like, I started writing what began as just the stories of my life, like a memoir. And then it became clear as I was making a structure for the book with a publishing company. Hold on a second. I really want this to be prescriptive. I have doctor in front of my name. I do want this to be self-helpy. So then what helped me the most? And it wasn't until I worked those steps in a modern way that my whole spiritual life began. And so I was like, that's what this book is. That's my mission. That's my message. And now it's the thing I care the most about as far as my work goes in the world.
So it's basically like, and anytime jump in, but as I understand it, it's the steps reimagined, which you've talked about, and it's applicable pretty much to anybody on the planet Earth. This gift that I was given because I had to be such a complete wreck that I was like, okay, what do you got? Because it's got to be better than what I've been doing for the past 20 years, or at least the past 2 years, right? Or whatever brings you to your absolute needs. And, I've always thought, you hear this in recovery and meetings, whatever. Man, it would be good for normal people, like you said, to have a program as well, right? Because we all got something, like everybody's got something. And I truly feel like I hit the lottery and hitting rock bottom because I was open to all of this stuff because I needed it so badly. And it changed my life, really gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I still practice it today. For most people, that situation, and good for them, right? It doesn't crop up. They're not like on the brink of death or disaster like I was, right? Ready for anything. And so now you have this for people, and literally it's a launching pad.
It is. And I mean, if you take a quick scan of some of your friends and family, I bet several people come to mind who are in a job they don't like, in a relationship that isn't reciprocal, in a marriage without love, who are lonely, disconnected, full of anger, full of fear. These steps are for all of those people.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the people I coach with are not even substance abusers. They're just people with massive pain points, often in one or maybe more than one area, like a marriage that's deeply unfulfilling. And the goal is not to get them out of the marriage. That's not my responsibility. That's up to God. My job is to free them from the emotional prison that they're in, regardless of their external circumstances. And the steps can do that.
It's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so a couple more things for you, because a couple things I'm curious about, and I also want to learn a little bit more about the book. Like, where can people find it? Like, they can find it anywhere. Is there an audio book?
Yes, it was so important to me because a lot of people asked me if I was making an audiobook. And so
I'm in now. I'm telling you.
Yes, and it's my voice because the story is way too personal. And so it's a totally unique experience to go through it in that way. And Amazon is the easiest place you can find and buy my book.
And we'll put all this stuff in the show notes, the link for people. Yeah. And along with the podcast too, which I love the title, The Truth About Addiction. Like what do you cover on the podcast? What makes it unique?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, right, is that I started that after I lost my father and before I lost my sister. And I was having this itch again, to start talking about out loud this business of recovery and really about an emotionally sober life. So the earlier episodes are just demystifying addiction and dispelling the myths like people have a choice. When are they going to fucking get it? Like all these things all these stigmas, right? And really just pulling back the curtain on what it's like to suffer from it. And it's gotten so much more interesting, in my opinion, as my work has evolved, as my book has come out, because a lot of the guests I have, not only do they not necessarily have traditional recovery stories in AA, so which I think is really important to just like broaden what is helping you recover, share it because it might save somebody's life.
Yes.
I have to judge it, and I am in no place to tell anybody else what is right for them. So really keeping an open mind has been amazing for the guests that I've attracted, and talking very much about emotional cycles of addiction and how this stuff plays out in everyday life. Because let's be honest, I'm 16 years sober, right? So yes, I could relapse at any moment. And I know if I relapse, I'm going to die. Like I'm super clear about my history of addiction and my fate with it if I touch it. But now it's about other presentations. I mean, we are in the land of instant gratification. Holy shit. If I don't want to feel something, I don't have to feel it at all. And then I'm in trouble, right? I am in trouble because at the very bottom of all of it, I'm going to be disconnecting from self, disconnecting from others, disconnecting from whatever my understanding of God is. And the last thing I ever want to do is get to the end of my life and wish I had lived it differently and wish I had loved more deeply and done the things that were truest to me. And if I'm not clearing out these emotional cycles of addiction where I could just scroll endlessly, eat the sugar, be hyper productive, get
You're
them
describing my life right now.
like
Take it easy.
I could spend my life in sobriety doing everything other than healing. So my podcast really talks about all the ways in which these other versions of addiction present, why they're there, and how we can continuously be compassionate about them and take responsibility for them so we can live a life with meaning and purpose.
Yeah, that's you described my new version of Sound Factory. Scrolling, right? Scrolling, eating a lot of bad food, right? And then let me over like counter and work like nonstop. You know, that's
100%. I've done it all. I've done it all in recovery. Like I can speak to it because I've done it.
I want to know a little bit about that. We put our toe in the water. I need a couple minutes on your music career. Like just real quick because I'm curious because you are a star. Just talking to you, I mean, you've got it, right? Which is why this is so cool because then we get you out there and more people can see you and connect with you. But what, like describe to me what that looked like, even if it's obviously a Cliff Notes version.
Well, it's actually so fun to tell this part because, the pursuit at the time when I was young was like, move over, Britney Spears, I'm coming for you. Because if you can hit like that, so can I, right?
What year is this around? What year is this? Like 2003, 2004?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Right. And so when we sort of zoom into this part where I'm deciding, forget it, entertainment's too scary, I'm going to get my degree, my addiction's off the rails, the dream of artistry collapses. And then I go into the sciences and I don't even entertain singing and dancing and writing for over a decade. I'm just a clinician now. Maybe I have an occasional dance client who finds me at Strong Heart Fitness and does some private lessons with me. But really, it was something that I had come to peace around, that maybe that just isn't, it's a thing I love. It's not a thing I'm going to do. Now, the cool part about this is that when I honored the call of my intuition and she said, you need to write a book, she also said, because my husband's business was doing really well at the time, that I didn't have a lot to give people. And if I wanted to take a break from PT and treating tons of clients, I could, which was very scary to trust my husband after building that business on the back of the affair. And now I'm saying, I'm going to sublease my space out and I'm going to let you hold me while I grieve and I write. And in that process, I took a dancing job at Equinox. I used to teach dance in gyms in New York City, and then I taught at nice studios, and I did that in LA, and I hadn't taught in a while, and I was like, I'm never going to teach in a gym again, right? And then I get this opportunity, and my hand shoots up, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm teaching at an Equinox in Westlake Village, by the way. Like, I'm in the suburbs. I'm not in Hollywood where anybody would show up that's a star. And this kid walks in halfway through a dance class, and I'm annoyed because I'm like, who shows up 30 minutes late to a 60-minute class? And he crushes it. And afterward, I'm like, who are you? Where did you come from? And where have you been all my life? It turns out he used to be a recording artist signed with Michael Jackson's label and then Madonna's label in a boy band that was really successful. And now he was a solo artist living 5 minutes away from me. And I was like, do you have a choreographer? He's like, no. I'm like, can I make something up to one of your songs and just show it to you? Because now I don't give a single fuck, right? If he could say no, it doesn't change my life at all.
Yeah.
And he's like, sure. So I do that. And he's like, you're hired. And I have some gigs coming up in LA. And actually, I'm going to Japan for 2 weeks, but the budget's really low. And I was thinking, oh, fuck no. Like, I've never been to Japan. I got to figure this out if I can. Right. So I said to him, if I buy my own ticket, will you pay for the choreography and the shows that I do and all of that? And he said, yeah. And then we're going to Japan. So at 40 years old with 2 babies at home, I go on a 2-week tour as this guy's choreographer. Total bucket list dream for when I'm 19 happening at 40. Okay. And then he hears me sing while we're on the tour. And he's like, do you know how to sing? And I'm like, kind of. I don't have training, but I'm naturally able to sing. I just don't fully understand how. And he's like, well, we should make music together. He let me sing some harmonies with him on stage in Japan, which was like insane for me. And then we made some pop music for several months at his house. And through all the events he took me to, because he was like going to red carpets. He's like, you want to come? You want to come to all
this person is?
Yeah. He's a controversial figure.
Yeah. Who is it?
His name is Ricky Rebel. If you look him up, that's not his like real name. It's his stage name. And he was in a boy band called No Authority way back in the day.
Yes.
And he's never quite hit since he was young. And he's been very controversial in politics and sort of speaking his mind about things that has kind of outcasted him again and again from the entertainment industry. And then he works his way back in. He's incredibly talented, but none of that bothered me, right? Like for me, I was like, people can feel however they want to feel about him. I'm not judging him. Like I learned as an addict. No,
we don't judge. I tell people that I'm like, look, I just don't judge. I'm always like, people are surprised, when they tell me something horrible, normal people.
Yep.
And I'm just like, yeah, like that's actually kind of like my sweet spot, like I respond to that.
Yeah. I think it's like if I start to judge others, not only is that a reflection of the level of judgment I'm probably dialing up within myself, which I know is super dangerous for what I've overcome with the self-criticism, but it's also a reflection of how spiritually fit I am, because that means I'm forgetting my own mistakes.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for me, it was just this magical time in between grieving and writing this book, which was so challenging and confronting. I got to go and play. He would let me sing with him at the events and dance. And I was going to red carpets and I'm like, what is happening right now? And then at one of these events, I met a guy who was a Grammy award-winning musician. And we had lunch a few days later, and I was not there to talk about me making music at all. He had asked me about choreography for some upcoming thing. And he, in the conversation with me, learned that I had been making some music. He's like, send me your music. And I'm like, okay, send it to him. And he goes, this is actually really good. Would you want to try to make syncs? Like you can make music that syncs up with the Super Bowl or Netflix shows, right? So there's a whole world where you can make money doing that. And I'm like, yes, I want to try to make a song for this super, like what? And so I have this session at the beginning of last year with him and this other guy who I hadn't met, who's also like a big music industry producer and musician. And we make the music. We don't get picked. I was quite nervous, but it was just such an unbelievable experience. And so the other man that was new to me, which is funny because when he first met me, he was like, just so you know, like you're not 19. You're not going to go get a record deal like this. I was like, just so you know, I'm extremely clear about that. I just love that I have this opportunity and I'm going to work as hard as I can. Like, so we're on the total same page. So he was really like tough on the outside. And then he took a liking to me and he said, you have this really powerful message. You have a book coming out because this was last year. It was coming out in June. Have you ever thought about making music that corresponds to the messages in your book? That's deeper and more guttural and more vulnerable because you're making pop music, which is cute, but you're a grown-up.
So you're doing this now?
Uh-huh. So I was like, I haven't thought of that because I didn't like the woman who said, "Have you ever made an amends to yourself?" I didn't know that was even
Yeah.
a possibility, right?
But you remain coachable and teachable, where you don't shut that stuff off. That's the beauty of this.
And so he and I have worked together for the last year, and we've made an album, and I am like dripping the songs out slowly.
Okay.
And I have a speaking event that I started in LA that I'm moving now up closer to my neighborhood in Westlake. And so I sing at my events, and I also speak and I interview other speakers. And I'm talking to Tony Robbins' team, which is insane to just say that out loud,
Yeah.
because he's launching a fast channel and wants original content.
Yeah.
So we're working on basically the sizzle reel for a docu-series that brings the 12 steps in mini episodes to the world, where I get to interview celebrities and high influence people about a practical application of the steps and how we live, love, parent, and lead. And it's a place my music can live. So I am not monetizing the music part of my life at this point. And by the way, if I never do, I don't care, because first of all, my children will also know the sound of my voice. They will have that to listen to when I'm gone, which is so beautiful. But it also could be monetized one day. And so for me, again, it's like the act of reckoning with this younger part of myself and singing without fear and my voice choking up and having a chance to get on stages and share this artistic part of me again is just another testament to literally not knowing what is possible at any time and staying completely open. And I truly believe if you're awake and aware in your life, the things you love will find you again. They will.
I'm so happy I asked that question.
I know. A lot of people don't ask me it.
I'm so happy I connected with you today. Is there anything else you want to say? Like, again, I'll put all this stuff in the show notes. You've helped me a lot today. Anything else?
I think what I want people to know is that my belief now today, after all this work, both professionally, personally, right, both spiritually and scientifically, is that you cannot heal the body without healing the spirit. And when I get to coach people in that container, it is the most rewarding work that I've ever done in my life. And I love, love, love connecting with people on calls. So on Instagram, I'm extremely active, which is at Dr. Samantha Harte, Hart.
I'm about to give you a follow.
You can literally DM me. It will not be a bot. It will be me that responds to you. You can book a discovery call. It's completely free with a link in my bio. And you can also just peruse around on my website, which is where you can find out like all the things I do and also book a call. So I guess to the listener, healing is possible. You deserve everything your heart desires, and your desires are there for a reason because they're meant for you. And if you want help, I can help you consciously create a body and life that you love.
Well, you started today on me. So Dr. Samantha Harte.
Are you going to be my first client from this?
Let's go. Honestly, you really are absolutely fantastic. You really are. And so I'm so pumped I get to share you with my tribe. And, we got a bunch of people who listen and watch. And I'll certainly be talking about you too going forward. So thank you so much. And anything you ever need from me, you just let me know.
Well, I'll definitely have you on my podcast. So
I would love to. I'm going to follow you right now on Instagram, and we'll keep in touch. And everybody else should do the same thing.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Harte. Great job. That was awesome. That was really great.
Yeah, it's such fascinating work, like where my life has taken me. It's just so, it's been a really strange place to know that on the heels of losing my sister, I am so unbelievably alive. I mean, whatever I was doing before with the body was extremely meaningful work, but I am at a completely different level of being clipped into
I can tell.
my purpose.
Yeah.
And so it's like, on the back of losing her, here I am just completely lit up. And so this feeling of like trying to be okay with that reality is fascinating, because I definitely don't feel guilty for where I'm at. I'm so proud of all the ways I could have handled the loss and what I've done with it and what I'm doing with it. But it's so sad. I mean, it's so sad that it sort of took that for me to be like, this is my soul's destiny.
Yeah.
But it's my responsibility to honor the call, as I said. So
well, it's like the radical responsibility thing too is awesome. So you're the best. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you for your time. And this will probably go up later this week. So I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, please stay in touch. And you said you're in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Texas, in Dallas. And then, I travel around. I call games for ESPN, so I do a lot of that. This summertime's kind of like my slower season. So during basketball season, I didn't get a chance to do a lot of these. So now I'm kind of rolling a bunch of them back out. And it's awesome to have you be one of the first ones. I mean, we've got like 200 episodes, but now I'm starting to get new ones out there. So very cool.
If you're ever in LA, or what part of Texas are you in?
Dallas, the DFW. Dallas and Waco. There's a studio in Waco we work out of too. So back and forth.
Okay. Yeah. If I'm ever there or you're over here.
Yeah. Austin, Dallas, let me know.
Yeah. I'd love to meet up. And if you ever do anything with the sober community.
Yeah.
I'm in, an event and vice versa.
Yes, please.
I'm always looking to speak on any platform that I can. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Samantha.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you. Great job.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.